When you let go, everything comes to you. Human beings have an almost instinctive tendency to hold on. We cling to people, possessions, memories, expectations, and even pain, as if by tightening our grip on them, we can somehow guarantee safety, meaning, or permanence. Yet life, in its infinite wisdom, constantly reminds us that everything is in motion. Nothing remains static. What we cherish today may vanish tomorrow, and what we fear today may dissolve into nothingness. To live fully is to recognize this truth. The act of letting go is not a loss, but the opening of space for something greater to flow into our lives. When you let go, you do not fall into emptiness. You fall into freedom. You are not abandoning what is essential. You are releasing what no longer serves your growth. The paradox of existence is that the tighter we cling, the more we suffer. But when we surrender with trust, the universe meets us with abundance. This principle is echoed in countless spiritual traditions, from Buddhist wisdom about non-attachment, to Stoic reflections on impermanence, to Christian teachings about faith. Letting go is not weakness. It is the highest strength. This text will explore in depth the transformative power of letting go. We will walk through 5 vast landscapes of thought, each illuminating how release opens the door to profound change. Each topic will unfold like a long meditation, flowing continuously, without interruption, so that the reader can sink into its rhythm and feel the truth vibrating through the words. By the end, you will see that letting go is not the end of anything. It is the beginning of everything, the weight of control and the liberation of release. We live in a culture that glorifies control. From the moment we are born, we are taught to structure, manage, and dominate the circumstances of our lives. Parents teach children to be disciplined. Schools teach students to meet deadlines and achieve measurable goals. Workplaces reward those who appear to have mastery over every variable. Success, in modern terms, often means the ability to predict, manage, and manipulate outcomes. But hidden beneath this obsession with control lies a deep anxiety, the fear that without our constant interference, life will collapse into chaos. This fear is powerful because it is rooted in the illusion that we can command the uncontrollable. We may plan every detail of our lives, yet storms still arrive, people still leave, economies still collapse, and our bodies still age. The truth is that life's most fundamental aspects, birth, change, and death, exist beyond our control. The more we attempt to seize them with iron hands, the more brittle our spirit becomes. We crack under the pressure of maintaining an illusion that was never meant to be sustained. Letting go, then, is an act of courage. It is the conscious decision to loosen our grip on the fantasy of control and to acknowledge reality as it is. To release is not to abandon responsibility, it is to embrace humility. It is the recognition that we are participants in a vast cosmic dance, not its choreographers. We may choose our steps, but the rhythm belongs to something larger than ourselves. Consider the way water flows down a mountain. It does not resist the rocks. It does not demand that the earth reshape itself to its will. It finds its path by surrendering to gravity, weaving around obstacles, and carving valleys through patient persistence. In the same way, when we let go of rigid control, we do not lose power. We discover a deeper kind of strength, the strength that comes from harmony with life's natural flow. At the heart of our compulsion to control is the ego. The ego craves certainty, identity, and ownership. It whispers, if you do not hold tightly to this job, this relationship, this reputation, you will lose yourself. But the self is not defined by what it clings to. It is defined by its capacity to exist, even without those attachments. When we let go, we allow the ego's illusions to dissolve, revealing the essence of our being that is indestructible, untouchable, and eternal. This realization is not abstract. It becomes clear when we observe the times we have been forced to release against our will. Think of heartbreak, when a relationship ended no matter how tightly you tried to preserve it. Think of career disappointments, when opportunities slipped away despite your endless effort. Think of death, when loved ones were taken, no matter how desperately you prayed for them to stay. In those moments, life taught you, sometimes cruelly, that control is an illusion. And yet, after the pain, did you not also find new doors opening? Did you not discover strength, resilience, or unexpected opportunities waiting where you least expected them? To let go willingly, then, is to align yourself with reality before suffering forces you to. It is to recognize that holding on is often what creates the weight that crushes you, while releasing is what allows you to breathe again. When you release the illusion of control, you do not descend into chaos. You rise into trust. Trust is the essence of letting go. It is not blind resignation, nor is it passivity. Trust is the profound faith that life unfolds with a wisdom greater than your limited perspective. When you trust, you no longer demand that events conform to your plans. Instead, you allow yourself to be guided by the unfolding. You realize that even pain and loss are not meaningless. They are part of the sculpting of your soul. This lesson is illustrated beautifully in the seasons of nature. Trees let go of their leaves every autumn, not because they want to, but because release is necessary for survival. If the tree held on to what it no longer needed, it would not have the energy to withstand the winter. By letting go, it creates the possibility of renewal in spring. Human life follows the same pattern. We must release what has fulfilled its purpose, even if it once brought us joy, so that we can regenerate and bloom again. Letting go is also the key to love in its highest form. Possessive love, clinging love, is a form of control disguised as affection. It demands, stay with me, belong to me, fulfill me. But true love is spacious, allowing the beloved to be free. When you love without clinging, you recognize that the other is not your possession, but a gift. You can cherish their presence without fearing their absence. This form of love is stronger because it is rooted not in attachment, but in acceptance. The liberation of release transforms our inner world. Anxiety begins to dissolve because anxiety is born from the tension of grasping. Resentment fades because resentment thrives on the unwillingness to release old wounds. Fear diminishes because fear is sustained by the desire to protect what cannot ultimately be protected. In their place emerges peace, the quiet knowing that nothing needs to be forced, that life's flow will bring what is meant for you and remove what is not. The paradox is profound. When you finally release, when you surrender the need to control, everything you once chased begins to find you. Opportunities arrive not because you forced them, but because you created space for them. Joy arises not because you grasped it, but because you stopped suffocating it with expectations. Love deepens not because you demanded it, but because you allowed it to be. This is the truth hidden within the phrase, when you let go, everything comes to you. Letting go is not a single act, but a lifelong practice. It requires constant awareness of when we are tightening our grip again and gentle reminders to soften. It requires faith in moments of uncertainty, when the mind screams for answers but the heart whispers patience. It requires courage to face the void left by what we release, trusting that emptiness is not barren but fertile, waiting to be filled with new life. And most of all, it requires remembering that letting go is not about losing, it is about receiving. It is the opening of hands clenched in fear so that they may be filled with gifts beyond imagination. If you have read this far, pause for a moment. Reflect. What are you holding on to right now that is weighing you down? A grudge, a dream that no longer serves your path, a relationship that suffocates your spirit, a fear of the unknown. Imagine yourself releasing it, not with despair, but with trust. Feel the space it creates within you. Feel the lightness, the breath, the possibility. This is the beginning of freedom. At the end of this first topic, I invite you not only to reflect, but also to take action. If these words resonate with you, support this journey of exploration and transformation by subscribing to the channel. By doing so, you will stay connected to future reflections that may guide you further on the path of release, peace, and abundance. The illusion of possession and the freedom of surrender. The second dimension of letting go invites us to confront one of the most powerful illusions human beings carry, the illusion of possession. From childhood, we are encouraged to define ourselves by what we own. Toys, clothes, gadgets, homes, cars, money, all become symbols not just of comfort, but of identity. We learn to say, "This is mine," with pride, as if the act of ownership validates our existence. The modern world intensifies this conditioning by tying status to accumulation. A person's worth is measured not by their character or wisdom, but by the things they can display. Yet beneath this constant pursuit lies a truth we often resist. Nothing we call ours is truly ours. We are temporary stewards of everything we hold, whether material or emotional, and one day, willingly or unwillingly, we will release it all. To see through the illusion of possession is both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it shakes the very foundation of how we have built our sense of self. If the house, the career, the bank account, the relationships, even the body itself are not permanent, then what are we? Liberating, because when the chains of ownership fall away, we discover a freedom that is deeper than any security possessions can provide. The truth is that nothing external defines us. We carry within us a reality that is untouched by loss. But to arrive at this realization, we must first confront the attachment we have to what we believe belongs to us. Consider the story of a man who spent his whole life building wealth. He sacrificed time with his family, neglected his health, and postponed joy in the hope that one day, when his fortune was secure, he could finally relax. Then, through an unexpected turn of events, a market crash, a betrayal, an illness, his fortune was swept away. At first he was consumed with despair, because everything he thought he owned had vanished. But in the silence that followed his grief, he began to notice something strange. He was still breathing. He was still capable of feeling the sun on his skin. He still laughed with his grandchildren, still admired the beauty of a flower. Slowly, he realized that what mattered most had never been lost, because it had never been dependent on possessions. What he discovered was the gift of letting go of ownership and stepping into the fullness of being. We all carry within us this man's story in some form. We chase objects or relationships with the belief that once we have them, we will be complete. We grasp at jobs, at recognition, at romantic partners, hoping they will secure our worth. Yet once obtained, these things rarely bring the peace we imagined. Instead, they create fear, fear of losing them, fear of not having enough, fear of someone else taking them away. The possession becomes a burden, heavier than the desire that first ignited it. What began as pursuit of happiness becomes prison of attachment. Letting go of possession does not mean rejecting the material world or refusing to enjoy its gifts. It means shifting our relationship with things from ownership to stewardship. It means recognizing that everything we encounter is passing through our hands like water through fingers. We may drink from it, bathe in it, enjoy its coolness, but we cannot hold it forever. To believe otherwise is to live in illusion. To accept it is to live in truth. This shift of perspective transforms how we relate not only to objects, but to people. Relationships are often poisoned by the illusion of possession. We treat partners, friends, or even children as if they belong to us, as if their purpose is to fulfill our expectations. We hold tightly, demand loyalty, resist their growth when it threatens our comfort. But love is not ownership. Love is freedom. To love someone is to allow them to be fully themselves, even if that means they walk a path away from us. When we let go of the desire to possess, we allow love to flourish in its purest form, spacious, generous, unconditional. Spiritual traditions across the world warn against the dangers of attachment to possession. The Buddha taught that clinging is the root of suffering, because all things are impermanent. The Stoics reminded us to practice premeditatio malorum, imagining the loss of what we cherish so we would not be enslaved by fear. Even the Christian scriptures tell us, do not store up treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy. Yet despite these warnings, the human heart resists letting go because we equate release with emptiness. We think, if I give up my possessions, my attachments, my claims, I will be left with nothing. But the truth is the opposite. Letting go reveals the everything that was hidden beneath the clutter of mine. Imagine a traveler carrying a heavy backpack filled with items collected along the journey. At first, the load feels manageable, even comforting. But as the road stretches on, the weight grows unbearable. Every step becomes laborious, every breath strained. Finally exhausted, the traveler sets the pack down. At that moment, a strange realization dawns. The freedom of walking unburdened is worth more than anything the bag contained. In the same way, when we release our illusions of possession, we move through life lighter, freer, and more open to the gifts that cannot be bought or owned. One of the greatest challenges of letting go of possession is our relationship with time. We do not only cling to objects, we cling to moments, memories, and identities. We say, this was my golden era, or that was the happiest time of my life, and then we suffer because we cannot bring it back. Or we define ourselves by a past achievement or wound, carrying it like proof of who we are. But the truth is that time itself cannot be possessed. Every moment arises and dissolves. To hold on to the past is to chain ourselves to what no longer exists, and to fear the future is to try to control what has not yet arrived. Letting go of possession means surrendering even our grip on time, living instead in the flow of presence where life is truly found. The practice of surrender begins in small ways. It may mean clearing clutter from your home, not because minimalism is fashionable, but because every item carries with it a thread of attachment. It may mean loosening your expectations in relationships, allowing others to surprise you instead of demanding they fulfill your script. It may mean breathing deeply when plans collapse, choosing trust instead of frustration. With each act of release, we retrain the heart to find security not in possession, but in being. Freedom comes not from having everything, but from needing nothing. When you let go of what you thought you owned, you discover that life itself belongs to you in a deeper way. You taste the richness of a sunrise without needing to capture it, the joy of a laugh without needing to control its source, the peace of silence without needing to fill it. The freedom of surrender is the recognition that you are complete, not because of what you hold, but because of what you are. Paradoxically, when you let go of possession, abundance begins to flow to you. This does not mean you will suddenly become wealthy in the material sense, but that life begins to provide in ways you could not imagine. Opportunities arrive, relationships deepen, creativity blossoms. Why? Because the energy once trapped in clinging is now free to circulate. You are no longer closed around what you fear losing, but open to what is meant to come. It is as if the universe delights in filling the hands that are no longer clenched. There is also a deeper mystery here. When you release your attachment to possession, you discover that nothing is ever truly lost. The objects, the people, the moments may pass, but the essence of what they gave you remains. The love continues in your heart, the lessons shape your soul, the beauty expands your awareness. Nothing essential can ever be taken from you, because it was never external to begin with. What you thought you possessed was always just a mirror pointing back to the infinite within you. In this way, letting go is not an act of poverty, but of wealth. It is the recognition that you already have everything you need, because you carry within you the source of all fulfillment. The possessions of the world are passing shadows, but the light that illuminates them is eternal. When you stop clinging to shadows, you begin to live in the radiance of what is real. To practice this truth, is not easy. It demands courage to release the objects, people, and identities we have built our security upon. It demands faith to walk into the unknown without the armor of ownership. It demands humility to recognize that we are not masters of life, but participants in its unfolding. But for those willing to surrender, the reward is immeasurable, a life lived not in fear of loss, but in the joy of freedom. As you reflect on these words, I invite you to consider what possessions, what attachments, what illusions of ownership are weighing you down. What would it feel like to walk lighter, freer, unburdened? Imagine yourself releasing them, not in despair, but in gratitude, trusting that what truly belongs to you can never be lost. This is the path of surrender, the path where letting go reveals the abundance that has always been waiting. At the close of this second topic, I ask you once again to stay connected to this journey. If these reflections have touched something within you, if they have inspired you to loosen your grip on possessions and taste the freedom of surrender, then I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. In doing so, you join a community dedicated to exploring the depths of wisdom, to living more freely, and to discovering the truth that when you let go, everything comes to you. The surrender of expectations and the arrival of peace. One of the greatest obstacles to inner peace is not what actually happens in life, but what we expect to happen. Expectations are silent architects of suffering, building invisible structures in our minds about how people should behave, how events should unfold, and how our journey should progress. When reality fails to conform to these internal blueprints, we feel betrayed, frustrated, or broken. Yet reality itself has not betrayed us. Only our insistence that it should match our plans has caused the pain. To let go of expectations, then, is to free ourselves from the tyranny of disappointment. It is to walk through life open to what is, rather than chained to what should be. Expectations begin early. A child learns to anticipate praise for good behavior. A teenager expects acceptance from peers. An adult expects recognition for effort. These expectations are natural, but when they harden into demands, they become chains. We may expect love to look a certain way, success to arrive in a specific form, happiness to follow a precise script. Yet life rarely follows our script. Instead, it writes its own story, filled with twists and detours, joys and sorrows we could never predict. The more rigidly we cling to our expectations, the more we resist the beauty of the unexpected. Imagine planting a seed in the ground. If you expect it to grow into a rose and it becomes a sunflower, you might feel disappointed, even though the sunflower is radiant in its own right. Your expectation blinds you to the gift before you. Similarly, when we expect life to unfold in one particular way, we often miss the wonder of how it actually unfolds. Letting go of expectation is not about giving up hope or vision. It is about holding them lightly, knowing that the universe often brings us what we need, not what we planned. Relationships are perhaps the clearest mirrors of how expectations shape suffering. We enter them with unspoken scripts. The partner should understand us without words, should meet our needs consistently, should embody the ideals we carry. When they fail, as all humans inevitably do, we feel wronged. But often it is not their failure, but the weight of our expectations that causes the pain. To love without expectation is to allow another to be human, to allow them to surprise us, disappoint us, challenge us, and still be worthy of love. It is to embrace them not as we imagine them to be, but as they truly are. The same dynamic applies to our relationship with ourselves. We set expectations for who we should become, how quickly we should succeed, how flawlessly we should perform. When we fall short of these ideals, we become our own harshest critics. The inner voice of expectation says, "You should be further ahead by now. You should not make mistakes. You should always be strong." These voices crush our spirit. But when we let go of expectation, we allow ourselves the grace of being human, fallible, growing, imperfect and still worthy of love. Letting go of expectation does not mean abandoning standards or goals. It means shifting from demand to openness. It means working diligently toward a dream, but releasing the insistence that it must manifest in one exact form. It means offering love without demanding it be returned in a specific way. It means walking a path without requiring the destination to match the picture in your mind. This openness creates space for wonder because the unexpected often carries greater gifts than the expected ever could. Consider the many times in your life when what you thought you wanted was not what you truly needed. Perhaps you longed for a relationship that later would have broken your spirit, or a job that would have drained your joy. Perhaps you dreamed of a future that, if realized, would have kept you from discovering your true path. Life's rejections often feel cruel in the moment, but with time we see them as redirections. The collapse of expectation makes room for the arrival of grace. The practice of releasing expectation is closely tied to presence. Expectations live in the mind's projections, either into the future, where we imagine what should happen, or into the past, where we replay what should have happened. Presence lives in the now, free from shoulds, open to is. When you are fully present, you are not demanding that this moment be different. You are receiving it as it is. This acceptance is not passivity, but peace. It allows you to act from clarity rather than reactivity, to respond to life as it unfolds rather than to the story of how you think it should unfold. This surrender also deepens our resilience. When we cling to expectations, every deviation feels like failure. When we release them, deviations become opportunities. A cancelled plan is no longer a tragedy, but a chance for spontaneity. A rejection is no longer a wound, but a redirection. A loss is no longer an end, but the opening of a new chapter. Letting go of expectation allows us to bend with life's winds instead of breaking under them. It is important to acknowledge, however, that releasing expectations is not easy. The mind clings to them because they provide a sense of control. They offer the illusion that if we predict and demand, we can secure certainty. To release them feels vulnerable, as if we are stepping into the unknown. Yet the unknown is where life truly lives. It is in the unexpected that we meet love, growth, and transformation. The familiar may feel safe, but it rarely awakens the soul. The art of letting go of expectation can be practiced in simple daily ways. When you begin your day, instead of demanding that it go according to plan, you can whisper, "I welcome whatever arises." When you meet someone, instead of projecting onto them the role they should play, you can choose to see them freshly, as they are in that moment. When you set a goal, you can work toward it diligently, but release the demand that success must look a certain way. Each of these acts loosens the grip of expectation and opens the door to peace. There is a profound paradox here. When you stop expecting life to deliver joy, love, or success in precise forms, you become more capable of experiencing them in their true forms. Joy may not look like the fantasy you imagined, but it may arrive in a quiet sunset, in a shared laugh, in a moment of silence. Love may not resemble the storybook ideal, but it may reveal itself in the steady presence of someone who stands by you. Success may not be the title or the wealth you dreamed of, but it may be the deep fulfillment of living authentically. When you release expectation, you stop chasing shadows and begin embracing substance. Letting go of expectation is also a spiritual act. It is the surrender of the ego's insistence that it knows best. It is the trust that life, or God, or the universe has a wisdom beyond our limited vision. This trust does not eliminate effort, it transforms it. You still act, still dream, still create, but you do so without the burden of demanding specific outcomes. You act because it is in your nature to act, not because you are bargaining with life. This freedom allows you to live more fully, more joyfully, and more peacefully. As with all practices of letting go, the release of expectation does not happen once, but over and over. We may loosen our grip in one moment and find it tightening again in the next. That is not failure but practice. Each time we notice our mind constructing a should, we have the chance to soften it into an is. Each time we catch ourselves disappointed by unmet expectations, we have the chance to shift into gratitude for what is present. Slowly, the grip weakens and peace grows. The arrival of peace through the surrender of expectation is not a distant dream. It can be tasted in this very moment. Pause. Notice if there is something you are expecting right now, a response from someone, an outcome from an effort, a plan for the future. Notice the tension that expectation creates in your body, the subtle anxiety of waiting for life to obey your will. Now imagine loosening that grip. Imagine saying, I release the demand for this to happen in my way, and I trust what is unfolding. Feel the peace that arises in the space left behind. That peace is always available, waiting for you to let go. Life is not here to fulfill your expectations. It is here to awaken your soul. The more you release the demand that it obey your plans, the more you discover its deeper purpose. The path of letting go is not about giving up. It is about opening up. It is about stepping into the mystery with trust, knowing that what is meant for you will not miss you, and what misses you was never meant for you. In this trust lies a peace beyond all expectations. At the close of this third topic, if these reflections have spoken to you, if they have invited you to loosen the chains of expectation and step into the freedom of peace, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. By subscribing, you continue the journey into wisdom, reminding yourself again and again that when you let go, everything truly comes to you. The release of fear and the embrace of trust. Fear is one of the most persistent shadows in the human heart. It whispers in the quiet moments, shapes our choices, and limits our lives in ways we often fail to see. At its root, fear is the clinging to what we believe must not change, the desperate attempt to hold on to safety, certainty, and permanence in a world that offers none of these. Fear is the refusal to let go. It says, if I release control, I will be hurt. If I trust, I will be betrayed. If I surrender, I will lose everything. But life teaches us again and again that fear is not a protector. It is a prison. To let go of fear is to step into trust, and trust is the gateway to peace, courage, and abundance. The human mind is built to anticipate danger. This instinct has kept our ancestors alive, alerting them to predators and threats. But in the modern world, where physical dangers are often less immediate, the same mechanism creates imaginary monsters. We fear rejection, failure, loss, illness, loneliness, and death. We rehearse worst-case scenarios, replay past traumas, and chain ourselves to a cycle of anxiety. Fear convinces us that holding tightly will protect us, but in truth, it only binds us more strongly to the very suffering we are trying to avoid. Letting go of fear does not mean denying its existence. It means facing it with open eyes and seeing through its illusions. Most fear is built not on reality, but on projection, on stories the mind invents about what could go wrong. These stories rarely come true, and when they do, they are often less catastrophic than imagined, yet we live as though they are certain. To release fear is to recognize these stories for what they are, shadows cast by the mind, not truths written into the fabric of existence. The act of release begins with courage, but courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is moving forward even with fear present, trusting that strength will meet you on the path. Think of a child learning to swim. At first, the water feels overwhelming and fear screams that they will drown. But with each attempt, they discover that the water can hold them, that their body can float. Fear dissolves not because the water changed, but because trust grew. In the same way, when we step forward into life despite fear, we discover that we are held by something greater than our own grasping. Fear thrives on attachment to outcomes. We fear losing what we love, failing to achieve what we desire, facing the unknown future. When we let go of the need for certainty, fear begins to lose its grip. Trust grows in its place, not blind trust, but deep trust in the unfolding of life. Trust says, I may not know what tomorrow holds, but I know I will meet it with strength. I may not control how events unfold, but I believe they carry meaning. I may not avoid pain, but I trust that even pain has its purpose. One of the most profound fears is the fear of loss. We fear losing relationships, opportunities, health, and ultimately life itself. Yet loss is woven into the fabric of existence. Nothing remains the same, nothing is permanent, and all we cling to will one day slip away. To fight this truth is to live in constant terror. To embrace it is to live in freedom. When you accept impermanence, you no longer cling in desperation. You cherish what is here now, knowing it is a gift. And when it passes, you trust that life will continue to provide. Another fear that paralyzes is the fear of failure. We are conditioned to believe that mistakes diminish our worth, that falling short defines us. This fear keeps us from taking risks, from creating, from pursuing dreams. But failure is not the enemy, it is the teacher. Every failure reveals something new, opens another path, strengthens resilience. The fear of failure chains us to stagnation, but the release of fear liberates us into growth. When you let go of fear, you no longer demand perfection. You embrace progress, however imperfect. There is also the fear of judgment, the anxiety about how others see us. This fear robs us of authenticity, pushing us to perform roles instead of living truthfully. We hide parts of ourselves, silence our voices, shrink our light to avoid rejection. But in doing so, we reject ourselves. Letting go of this fear means embracing vulnerability, daring to be seen as we are, and trusting that those meant to walk with us will stay, while those who leave were never meant to remain. The release of fear makes space for genuine connection, because authenticity invites love in its purest form. Perhaps the deepest fear of all is the fear of death. Death represents the ultimate letting go, the final release of body, identity, and possession. We fear it because it confronts us with the unknown, with the end of all we cling to. Yet countless traditions remind us that death is not the end, but a transformation, not destruction, but return. To live in constant fear of death is to die before our time, to miss the richness of life. To let go of this fear is to live fully, cherishing each breath, each sunrise, each connection, as the miracle it is. Death loses its sting when we learn to let go moment by moment, practicing release in small ways so that the final release becomes a continuation of trust. Letting go of fear requires practice. It begins with awareness, seeing when fear is speaking, recognizing its voice without obeying it. Then comes the act of choosing trust, even when fear insists otherwise. Trust grows with repetition. Each time you step into the unknown and discover you are still alive, still capable, still supported, trust deepens. Slowly, fear loses its authority, and trust becomes your default posture. This transformation is not only personal, but collective. Much of the suffering in the world arises from fear. Fear of difference, fear of scarcity, fear of vulnerability. Nations build weapons out of fear, communities divide out of fear, individuals harm others because they fear being harmed. Imagine a world where fear is released and trust embraced. Trust in the abundance of resources, trust in the dignity of each human being, trust in the resilience of life. Such a world is not a utopia, it is the natural result of letting go of fear on a collective scale. But even if the world as a whole resists this transformation, each of us can begin it within ourselves. Every time you choose trust over fear, you contribute to the healing of the whole. Every time you release fear and act with love, you create ripples that touch others, inviting them to do the same. Your courage becomes a gift, your trust a beacon, The act of letting go is never just personal, it is always universal. There is a mystery hidden in this process. When you release fear, the very things you feared begin to lose their power over you. If you feared rejection and release it, you discover the freedom to be yourself, and in that freedom, you attract deeper connections. If you feared failure and release it, you discover the courage to create, and in that courage, you often succeed. If you feared death and release it, you discover the fullness of life, and in that fullness, death becomes less terrifying. Fear feeds on resistance. Release starves it. The embrace of trust is not naive. It does not mean pretending that pain or danger do not exist. It means facing them with openness, knowing that you are larger than any fear, that life carries wisdom even in difficulty. Trust does not eliminate storms, but it allows you to sail through them with steady hands and a calm heart. It transforms the unknown from a threat into a mystery, from a void into a possibility. Trust also deepens your relationship with the divine, however you understand it. To trust is to believe that there is meaning, that you are not abandoned, that life is not random chaos but a tapestry woven with purpose. This trust does not require dogma. It requires surrender. It requires the willingness to step into the unknown, not with trembling, but with reverence. It is to say, I do not know, but I am willing. I do not see the whole path, but I will walk. I do not hold the future, but I trust the one who does. As you consider these words, pause and reflect. What fear is holding you back right now? Is it the fear of losing someone, the fear of failing, the fear of being alone, the fear of change, the fear of death? Name it in your heart. Feel its weight. And then imagine loosening your grip. Imagine opening your hands and letting it fall away. In its place, feel the warmth of trust, rising like sunlight after a storm. Trust that you are supported. Trust that life is unfolding with wisdom. Trust that you are stronger than you know. This is the essence of letting go, releasing fear, embracing trust. It is not an easy path, but it is the only path to freedom. Fear will return, but so will the opportunity to release it. Each act of release builds your strength, deepens your peace, and expands your capacity to live fully. The journey of letting go is not about escaping fear, but transforming your relationship with it, so that fear becomes a teacher instead of a master. At the end of this fourth topic, if these words have touched you, if they have invited you to release fear and step into the embrace of trust, then I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. By subscribing, you join a community of seekers, learning to live with courage, peace, and freedom. Together we walk the path of letting go, discovering again and again that when you release fear, when you let go, everything truly comes to you. The gift of emptiness and the fullness that follows. Emptiness is a word that frightens most people. It conjures images of loneliness, absence, lack, or despair. We fear the emptiness of a silent room, the emptiness that follows loss, the emptiness within when meaning seems absent. So we fill our lives with noise, possessions, distractions, and endless activity, hoping never to confront the vast quiet that waits behind it all. Yet, emptiness, when seen with clear eyes, is not a curse, but a gift. It is the open space into which life can pour its abundance. When you let go, you inevitably encounter emptiness, and if you have the courage to remain with it, you discover that emptiness is not void, but potential, not loss, but the birthplace of fullness. The fear of emptiness is tied to our clinging. We hold on to relationships long past their vitality because we fear the silence they would leave. We cling to old identities because we fear the emptiness of not knowing who we are. We fill our calendars with constant activity because we fear the emptiness of unstructured time. Yet in doing so, we deny ourselves the very space we need to grow, to create, to heal. Just as a field must lie fallow to regain fertility, the soul needs emptiness to be renewed. The gift of emptiness is that it clears away what is false so that what is true may enter. Think of the potter shaping clay. The usefulness of the pot is not in the clay itself, but in the empty space it creates. Without emptiness, the pot cannot hold water, cannot serve its purpose. Similarly, the usefulness of a room is not in its walls, but in the emptiness within them. Emptiness gives function, possibility, and meaning. So too with our lives. It is the space between experiences, the pauses between breaths, the silences between words that allow life to be felt deeply. The emptiness we fear is in fact what makes everything possible. When we let go of possessions, expectations, fears, attachments, we often find ourselves standing in a kind of emptiness. At first, this feels unbearable. The relationship ended, and there is silence where laughter once lived. The job is gone, and there is stillness where purpose once resided. The dream collapsed, and there is emptiness where hope once glowed. In these moments, we are tempted to rush to fill the void with anything. New relationships, new tasks, new distractions. But if we resist this urge, if we remain still within the emptiness, something miraculous happens. We begin to sense that the emptiness is alive. It is not barren but fertile, not cold but waiting, not absence but presence in disguise. To embrace emptiness is to discover the fullness of being itself. When you sit quietly in the silence of loss, you begin to hear the deeper rhythms of your soul. When you stop filling every moment with distraction, you begin to feel the richness of the present. When you release the need for external validation, you discover the vastness of your own worth. Emptiness is the canvas on which life paints its most beautiful colors. Without emptiness, there is no space for creation, no room for transformation, no openness for grace. The spiritual traditions of the world have long recognized the gift of emptiness. In Buddhism, the concept of shunyata, or emptiness, is not nihilism, but the recognition that all things are interdependent, lacking a separate, fixed self. This insight dissolves attachment and reveals the interconnected fullness of reality. In Christian mysticism, the practice of kenosis, or self-emptying, is the path to union with the divine. When the self is emptied, God fills the soul. In Taoism, emptiness is revered as the source of all things, the void that gives rise to form, the silence from which harmony flows. Across cultures, emptiness is not feared, but celebrated as the ground of transformation. The gift of emptiness can also be seen in the cycles of nature. Winter, with its barren trees and silent fields, may appear empty, but it is precisely this emptiness that allows renewal in spring. The seed lies in the dark soil, unseen, surrounded by emptiness, yet within that space the miracle of life stirs. The night sky appears empty, but its vastness is filled with stars, galaxies, and mysteries beyond comprehension. The ocean's depths may seem empty, but they teem with hidden life. What looks like emptiness to the eye is fullness waiting to be discovered. In our own lives, emptiness teaches us to release illusions. When we lose what we thought defined us, we discover what truly endures. When we face silence, we discover that we are not alone, but connected to something vast and infinite. When we stop filling every space with noise, we discover the music of stillness. Emptiness reveals that we are more than our possessions, more than our roles, more than our thoughts. We are the awareness that holds it all, spacious and unchanging, vast enough to contain both joy and sorrow, life and death. The fullness that follows emptiness cannot be forced. It arrives naturally, like dawn after night, like spring after winter. When you allow emptiness to exist without fleeing it, it transforms into presence, into peace, into creativity. Many of the greatest works of art, the deepest insights, the most profound awakenings arise from periods of emptiness, when the old has fallen away and the new has not yet appeared. The willingness to sit in emptiness is the womb of creation. To live in harmony with emptiness requires trust. Trust that you do not need to fill every silence, that you do not need to cling to every identity, that you do not need to resist every loss. Trust that emptiness is not the end, but the beginning, not a punishment, but a preparation. Trust that life knows how to fill the space you create with something more aligned, more beautiful, more true. This trust transforms emptiness from a void to a gift, from something to fear into something to welcome. There is a paradox here. The more we fill ourselves with attachments, distractions, and noise, the emptier we feel inside. But when we dare to release, to clear space, to embrace emptiness, we feel full. Full not of things, but of being. Not of noise, but of presence. Not of illusion, but of truth. The emptiness we feared becomes the very fullness we sought. Consider a simple practice. Sit quietly in a room without distractions. At first, the mind resists, restless, searching for something to fill the silence. But if you remain, if you breathe into the stillness, a shift occurs. The silence becomes alive. The emptiness begins to feel like a vast embrace. You realize you are not separate from it. You are it. This is the gift of emptiness. It reveals your true nature as spacious awareness, untouched by loss, unbroken by change, infinite in capacity. Letting go always leads here to emptiness. But if you stay, if you trust, emptiness reveals its hidden gift, fullness beyond measure. The love you thought you lost is still within you. The meaning you feared was gone is deeper than ever. The joy you believed had vanished arises anew. Everything you let go of returns in a new form, purified, transformed, multiplied. This is why the mystics and sages say, when you let go, everything comes to you. Not because the external world rushes to fill your hands, but because you discover that fullness has always lived within. At the end of this fifth and final topic, if these words have touched you, if they have helped you see emptiness not as a curse, but as a gift, then I invite you to subscribe to the channel. By subscribing, you continue the journey of release and discovery, joining a community that embraces the truth that when you let go, everything comes to you.